Hello and welcome to GM Tips. GM Rick here. We are going to be focusing on the MegaDungeon and doing your own MegaDungeon. So not just running one, but doing your own. So how do you do your own MegaDungeon and make it interesting and keep your players going and keep your own creative juices going? Well, I'm going to get into that a little bit today. So you can see part 2 with the Doctor Who shirts. I love it. So you got going this way, Hartnell. You've got, oh God, I always forget the second Doctor. Then you got Pertwee, then you got Baker, and Colin Baker down here, and then you've got my boy that's married, who David married the daughter of. So, a couple Doctors that I used to like in the old Doctors. All right, so the MegaDungeon. The first thing you got to remember when you want to plan out something like a MegaDungeon, and forgive me for the family feud in the background, it's how I keep me GM happy. How do you keep a MegaDungeon going? Well, you got to design an area that you're going to put the MegaDungeon. So the big MegaDungeon designers like Rapanathuk, that's part of Frog God Games. You have got the Emerald Spire, which is part of Pathfinder. You've got Temple of Elemental Evil and the Slaver series out of Dungeons and Dragons. Let me think of all the other ones. You've got a redo of Tomb of Horrors that was done by, it was a MegaDungeon other than Rapanathuk that was done. You've got the Dungeon Classics where they did a few MegaDungeons. The one thing that is a constant in designing one of these dungeons that is really important in my mind is the surrounding area for the dungeon itself. And here's why. You've got to have a place where the players can go to rest, get healed, set up contacts, gather information, sell items, and make allies and NPCs that will go with them in said MegaDungeon. So you have to have some sort of a setting area that makes sense. When you're doing a MegaDungeon, we're not talking an adventure path. We're talking a MegaDungeon with multiple levels. You've got to pick a setting. What are some great things? Well, a lot of the dungeons that are done either pick a keep, a small keep, like Keep on the Borderlands, or Hamlet, a small village, and they build the dungeon within that vicinity. The village was started for whatever reason. They found the MegaDungeon, and now they're terrorized by it. Okay? So keep in mind that as we look at this, this is something that is part of the players figuring all this out. They have to look at what kind of MegaDungeon can they do. And that's something that I think you've got to look at populating and putting a place that makes sense. So I'm going to say this now as a part of things. Really look at places that do make sense, because if you don't, what's going to happen is your players are going to get easily bored because they can't get to anything that's going to help them to sell items off, to get resources, to get healed, to get spells and other types of things. They really and truly need this sort of setting that really paves the way. And again, why do the players come there in the first place? A lot of people don't know why the players would even reach out into a said setting. Hang on real quick while I put this onto some music for my wonderful little mini GM. Or kids, I don't have to do that for you. I'm just got to do that for you. So you're looking at this, you want to design it out. So, sorry, I'm going to quit using my cross words. You want to design this with places that the players can go, taverns, inns that they can stay at, supply and feed stores that they can get things for their mounts or their other animals that they're taking down into the dungeon with them, their own food. You're going to run out of food if you're down in a dungeon. You don't have to create food and water, and even if you do, it's not very tasty. You want to have a place where you can sell magic items and get magic items. You want to have temples, so at least 2 or 3 gods or goddesses that will help match similar faiths to the characters so they can get the type of supplies and help and support from them. maybe a local guild that they can work with, or a local society that they can get boons and banes for doing the missions with, as well as other rewards. You want a town of some sort, at a minimum. Not a thorp or a village. That's way, way too small in my mind. You're not going to have the buying power. So a small town is the smallest you want to go. Now, I'll give you an example here, and I'll show you what they put into this particular one. Hamlet was a small village. It wasn't quite a town. In my mind, it didn't have enough. This is a small town in Fort Inevitable. Now, what makes it so key to the things? Well, the economy and the different things there. And the purchase, you notice the purchase limit, the spell casting, and the base value. That's what the players can get their hands on. You want that as a minimum. My suggestion as a GM to you is designing this. Make it a small city or a large town. And you don't have to put it right by the dungeon. You can put it within a couple miles of it. Now, why does that make sense? It's something that was discovered or found that was lost, that the players are going into and trying to find their way into. It could have been causing problems. Maybe it brought adventurers and evil types there that rival the party. All this thing can factor in, but you want to put it near there. Now, you don't want to go too big. And the reason is because with too big, you've got to have a reason why other players and adventurers haven't gone and cleared it out in the first place. And usually, small towns, large towns, and small cities don't always have those resources. Keep that in mind. So number one, designing an area. Now, if you want to put a bigger city within 50 miles, 100 miles, be my guest. Then design a second city and make that so the players have more purchasing power. Again, I wouldn't do a metropolis because why would somebody else not come in and clear it out? Unless it's that powerful and that nasty, somebody else would have tried, and there would be empty levels. You want to put it maybe near a large city at the best, or a small city, just because, again, out of sight, out of mind. Yes, it's a bothersome thing to have near us, but we're not going to send resources down there that we don't have. And it's not a big draw necessarily for everybody and their uncle to come go get the item out of it. That's the key draw. Now, when you're designing the dungeon, second thing you need to take into account, you've got to look at how many levels you want to do. And I would break those levels up into segments. So, what do I mean by that? 1 to 3 levels has the low-level critters in it. They could be servants. They could be maybe an outer level that throws everybody off. That's your first level and set of levels. And what you do is you put if you defeat everything in here, this is what level you should be afterwards. If you defeat half of it, this is what level you should be. So you give the parties an expectation of how high of a level they're going to get to. And you don't have to tell them that, but you have that there ready for you as a reference guide. The same thing for the next 3 levels, and the next 3 levels, and the next 3 levels. How many levels are MegaDungeons? Well, let me share with you an idea from one of these. This MegaDungeon here is over 15 levels. I won't tell you any more than that. Over 15. What's a nice number? I would say with the segmenting and the dividing up in the levels, depending on where you want the party to end out, if you want them to end out at 16th or 17th level, I'd put 21 levels in it. And why is that? So they can go up 2 to 3 levels every time. I'd say 2 levels every section. Each section has its own set of goals and reasons why the party comes in. So you can say the first levels are just about them figuring stuff out. Maybe they find an amazing find there that draws the society they're working for in more. So then the next level has its next set of goals. And you put a reward system in at each one. So this society gives them so much prestige, so much fame, ability to work with their operatives to get resources, maybe notoriety, maybe allows them to get a secret identity if they're vigilantes in that town. Whatever you want to do to boon and bane them. you set up a reward system, and that goes with the levels. So each of those sections has a certain set of rewards. It's not just advancement in the character level and skills, but it's also about notoriety. And they gain some advantages going through things. Maybe it even gets them into, like with Pathfinder, we have mythic levels, or mythic tiers. So you get into the mythics by going into each section. It has a mythic draw that can take you up to maybe 7th level mythic. And that's separate from other levels. So there are things that you can put in there that will draw the players. You, the GM, have to think about that. What's Rick's suggestion? Well, my suggestion is real simple. I would go so many prestige points, since mine's Pathfinder. You can do fame points if you want in D&D or whatever type of rewards there to get them boons. I would put maybe 2 to 4 every level, so that at the end they're in the 20s. So a lot of notoriety in that guild. Now, if you want to make it go real high level and real far advancement, make it 3 or 4 or 5 a level. So I'd say even up to maybe 6, so they can get to the 40s. So they become very advanced in that section of whoever they're working for and their notoriety. Makes a lot of sense. Keeps the draw of the players. You also want to have different flavors in there that line up, because you don't want the players to get bored with level after level and crawl after crawl. I would say don't do more than 20 rooms a level. Okay? You're going to burn yourself out on maps. You're going to burn yourself out on what the party comes into and descriptions. You don't want to do that. What I would suggest is write a kind of a synopsis showing the levels in the rooms. Put a small 3-4 sentence description of each room. Then the encounter and the challenge in the room, if there's traps or encounters. Things the players might discover in the room is in the next section. So you can say discoveries, and you put 4 or 5 sentences there. Then work out a table or a guide where you can use set NPCs and monsters. So like Pathfinder has the Villain Codex, the Monster Codex, the Inner Sea Codex, all these different codexes. Utilize it. The NPC Codex. Why did Paizo make all these books? Some of you guys always wonder when you look at that and go, God, they made so many books. For that reason, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel as a GM every friggin' time you're doing monsters and NPCs. There's a common template. And if you want, you can change out a couple items down under the description, but it's a common template that's easy to use, easy to put something in, easy for a GM to run, doesn't take forever for them to have to qualify and get that going. Utilize this. You can use it on the PR. If you don't have the books, guys, you guys, and forgive me, I get the other game systems, and I love D&D 5e. I like 4e. I'm not a huge fan. I love 3.5, 3.0. I love OD&D. I love Numenera. I love Cypher System. I love Open Legend. I love Savage Worlds. I love so many of these different systems. Quit ragging on Pathfinder. Everything is free on the PRD or SRD that you ever want to get, including third-party stuff. If you don't want to buy the books, buy 1 or 2 and use those. I understand you don't have money to invest. I take away, this is my only hobby outside, my major hobby. So that's where I invest my money. I get it. I get people get tired of what they can see as an over amount of buying. But for me, it is good material, and it is good source material. It's not like they're just recycling and rehashing everything. You do a little bit of that. But most of it's new stuff. And that's the good thing. So my little soapbox, I'm sorry. I love everybody else's systems. Quit killing my system that I love. I do love it for a reason, and I play it and GM it for fun for a reason, because I like it. So you can use those kind of resources. Utilize now, fortunately, 5e now has a little resource with a third party that's on Pinterest that does a lot of third-party monsters, NPCs, and other things. You got your resources there too that don't cost anything that you can use. That's third-party source material. Very cool. And utilize that because it's going to help make your life easier when you're designing these. You want to spend more time on description and what they find than you do on the creatures. The creatures can be easily put in that makes sense. Couple baddies, yeah, do your own design on them. The main person in that, or the main critter in that area of the 3 levels, that spend some time designing yourself or picking something that's unique. So, the third thing I would say, have a good backstory that ties into your player's backstory. Even in a MegaDungeon like this, something could have happened in the area. Something could happen to draw them in. Maybe there's another group that's trying to get there. So the Aspis Consortium, or the Whispering Way, or other types of guilds. In the D&D ones, the Fire Knives, the Shadow Thieves of the Zentilar and Zentarine of my favorite area in the world. Yes. So there's a lot of things that the Zents were always fun to run, or the Church of Cyric, or the Church of Orcus, or one of these other groups is in there meddling. So utilize that and really work with that if you can. And then build encounter tables. So I would say build encounter tables for your players and your levels. So you want an outdoor encounter for the area. Utilize, again, a lot of these type of things. I would build the encounters before I populate the levels. Why? Because if you get tired, then you can use that encounter thing. And you can do a treasure table that matches what you want them to find that coincides with this adventure. And you can put the two together. And you can roll them. And that way it keeps it consistent for the different levels. So maybe you do one for levels 1 through 5 for the magic items, and you do encounters for every 2 levels. And you can put the challenge rating or the difficulty level, the difficulty class of it in there. And you can work with that. For GURPS, there's other things you can use in that and do towards that. Again, GURPS has a lot of fantasy settings as well as Savage World and others. You can work with that and utilize that to do that. But keep in mind that you want to do all this ahead of time. That's just what I do in prep. Any maps, have them laid out and ready to go prep time. If you use a third parties, use a third parties as long as they match up in the stairwells and you keep things consistent of how you get to the next level. Now, I say don't always use stairwells. Stairwells are common and expected. Do little secrets, crawl spaces, and other things that lead down. Now, a great idea, outside of just doing a MegaDungeon with just a dungeon, utilize the Underdark. Or the, the Underdark was used in D&D, and the Darklands is used in Pathfinder. Whatever underground levels to take them down. And you can really utilize this to make it pretty fun. That means Drow, Duergar, Eye Tyrants, Illithid, Intellect Devourers, the worms, oh god, the dark worms, nasty stuff that you can find down there in the Underdark, the alien things, the things that come out of Cthulhu. There's all kinds of stuff that they can find deep down within the depths. Maybe they find Yith, or they find other types of elder beings or elder creatures. They can find a lot of different alien things down there. Greys, even. You can use greys. Or you could use robot creations or flesh warping or other types of things that are down there, demons and other types of nasties. You can really do a lot with the Underdark, and you can set the corridors so it is a dungeon that comes up from a center city down deep, all the way up through those areas where there's maybe little breakthroughs by these empires. And so the rivals are Drow. Maybe they're Drow families, or Duergar, or Darrow, or Morlocks, or other types of creatures that come in, and it makes it pretty friggin' fun, because there's other pitfalls in there. There's radiation, there's poisonous gases, there's no breathing, there's darkness, there's insanity. You can do so much more outside the box than just a standard dungeon. So keep that in mind as you're doing these things. Caverns are much easier sometimes to draw than the rooms. So it makes it really interesting, and you can send them off in little snaky caverns that take them way off the beaten path into places they don't want to be. Or it could be a city that fell and was buried underground after a cataclysm that connects into the Underdark. That becomes your MegaDungeon, because the city and its different layers as it goes down and different hidey holes could be the different levels of it. So I hope this is helping with these MegaDungeon ideas. There's a lot you can do with it. Again, I'm sorry I'm not doing as much sci-fi here for you guys and other things. You know where you could go with that. Spaceships that ended up, so you could have a huge starliner that crashed into the Earth of that planet, and it's buried. And so you're trying to explore for some hidden technologies. So you get a little bit of the alien theme in there, and the backstories with Alien, and you get some other things in there as well, like the Doctor Who and the our Weeping Angels. There's so much you can do with these type of things. If you do a Harry Dresden, you could do like a fallen civilization, and you could do the same thing for the MegaDungeons. You're exploring this fallen civilization to maybe stop this cult from getting its hands on it. So the Formers, or the Red Court, or the White Court, or the Black Court from getting their hands on this, or the Fae, the evil cold Fae, so the frosty winter Fae. You can do a lot with this. And so keep in mind, no matter your setting, you can really do a lot. And I hope that everybody can really dig in. But the groundwork's kind of the same as you lay it out. Just make it as easy as you can for yourself, because this is going to be a long-term campaign. And you may do section by section by section by section, but have an idea of what's going to be in each section before the players get there, in case they go off the beaten path, as you know. All right, folks, I really appreciate your time. Again, this is going to go about 23 minutes, but I think it gives you some ideas for doing a MegaDungeon, and I hope it really helps. Thanks, and have a great week.